Hi everyone, this is Mr. Zhang, and today we'll be going over the math homework for Class P, and this is for session S or U4. All right, for question number 1, if 10 plus x is 5 more than 10, what's the value of 2x? So you just have to turn the word sentence to a number sentence here. So I'll give you 10 plus x is equal sign, and you have 5 more than 10, which means 5 plus 10. So more than means plus, is means equals to. So here you can just solve. If you subtract 10 from both sides, you figure out that x is equal to 5. And you're not looking for x, you're actually looking for 2x. So 2x is going to be 2 times 5, or choice C, 10. Next, for question number 2, the result when a number is divided by 2 is equal to the result when that same number is divided by 4. What is that number? So here you have some number, which we don't know what it is. We can call it n. N divided by 2 is going to be equal to n divided by 4. So here if you cross multiply on both sides, you get 4n is equal to 2n. Here if you subtract 2n from both sides, you'll get that 2n is equal to 0. And when you divide by 2, you get that n is equal to 0. So it's going to be choice C. The only number where you've divided by 2 that's equal to the same number divided by 4 is 0. All right, next for question number 3. This page is folded along the dotted line in the figure above. The left half of the letter W would exactly coincide with the right half of W. Which of the following letters, as shown, cannot be folded along a vertical line so that its left half will coincide with its right half? So this is just called a line of symmetry. And you're looking for whether or not each of these letters, these are vowels here, have a vertical line of symmetry. So you can actually see that A, E, I, O, and U, A, I, O, and U all have a vertical line of symmetry. But letter E doesn't. The left half looks like this, whereas the right half looks like this. So there's no line of symmetry here. All right, next for question number 4, in the figure above, lines L and K intersect at point Q. If M is equal to 40, let's label that, and P is equal to 25, what's the value of X? So here we have what are called vertical angles, and vertical angles have this X formation here. You see with line L and line K. These are vertical angles, or they're also known as opposite angles, and they are congruent. So because vertical angles are congruent, they're equal to one another. So X plus 25 on the right side has to be equal to 40. And if you subtract 25 on both sides, you get that X is equal to 15. And that's choice A. All right, next for question number 5, which of the following equations is satisfied by the 5 pairs of numbers listed in the table above? So an equation here, in terms of this function, needs to have this rule. A function just a rule for an input-output machine. And you have to make sure that this rule satisfies all of the x values. So we'd substitute an x for each of these choices, -2, 0, 1, 2, and 4, and you have to make sure you get all the ones to the right. Now, there are some x values that you want to substitute in first because they're easy. 0, 3, for example, is an easy one. If you let x equal to 0, y has to be equal to 3, so if you substitute in, for choice A, you get y equals 0 cubed plus 3, which is 3, so that's fine. For choice B, you have y is equal to 3 times 0 plus 3, which is also equal to 3. For choice C, you have -3 times 0, which is 0, plus 6 is equal to 6. So that's wrong because the y value has to be 3. For choice D, you got y is equal to 0 squared plus 6, which is equal to 6. Again, that's incorrect. And for choice E, you have 0 squared minus 7, which is equal to -7. It's again not equal to +3, so that's wrong. So you're just left with choices A and B left. So to differentiate between these, we can substitute in the next number. That's the next pair. That's also easy. That's 1 comma 6. So if you substitute in x equals 1, you're supposed to get y equals 6. So for choice A, that will give you, if you substitute in 1 for x, that will give you 1 cubed plus 3, which is just 4. And that's not equal to 6, so that's wrong. The answer has to be choice B. You can check. Y has to be equal to 3 times 1 plus 3, which is in fact equal to 6. And that's the only choice left. If you substitute in any other choice, it would work. It'll give you the value of the y if you substitute in some value for x. All right, next for number 6, the circle graph above shows how David's monthly expenses are divided. If David spends $450 per month for food, how much does he spend per month on his car? So he spends $450 for food, and food takes up 25% of his expenses. So if you know that 25% is actually $450, you can actually use either a proportion or a unit rate to figure out the percentage of the car, which is 20%. So you know that 20 and 25 has 5% in common, so we can use that as a unit rate. 25 divided by 5 is equal to 5%. So on the other side, you also have to take 1/5, or divide by 5. 5% of the entire monthly expense would be 450 divided by 5, or $90. Now, once you know what 5% is equal to, you don't need to find 1%. You can actually scale it up now and multiply by 4 to give you 20%. And once you times by 4, that'll give you $360. So that would be choice C. 20% would actually be $360. Now you can also solve this using a proportion. It would be 25 over 20 is equal to 450 over x, then cross multiply. You can also set up an equation to find the whole first by doing 25% over 100 times the total is equal to 450. So you can find the total t and then just multiply by 20% as well. So lots of ways to solve the percent question. You can choose any method you like, but proportions, unit rates are probably the best. All right, and here's the summary for this first page. Next, for number 7, if n and k are positive integers and 8 raised to the n power is equal to 2 raised to the k power, what's the value of n divided by k? So here we have two exponents. They have different bases. And that's not good. You actually want the bases to be the same. So you can rewrite 8 with a base of 2 by doing 2 cubed. So you will replace 8 with 2 cubed. So then your new equation is going to look like 2 cubed in parentheses raised to the n is equal to 2 raised to the k. And now we can actually use this power to a power. A law of exponent that states that b to the a raised to the c is equal to b to the a times c. So you have to multiply the exponents, which will give you 2 raised to the 3n is equal to 2 raised to the k. So therefore, 3n has to be equal to k. And to get the value of n over k, you have to divide by k on both sides, and then divide by 3. It'll give you n over k is 1/3, choice B. All right, next, for question number 8, in a certain store, the regular price of a refrigerator is $600. How much money is saved by buying this refrigerator at 20% off the regular price, rather than buying it on sale at 10% off of the regular price with an additional discount of 10% off the sale price? So here you have two different ways of buying this refrigerator. So method 1 is 20% off. So if it's just 20% off, then we start paying the remainder, which is 80%. And 80%, is 4/5. You can also represent this as 0.8. So you can either use a decimal or a fraction, where you're going to multiply by the total, which is 600. The fraction is easy here because you can cross simplify. 4/5 times 600, or really 600 over 1, allows you to cross multiply or cross simplify the 600 to just 120, and then 128 times 4 becomes 480. So that's what you would pay. Now for method number 2, you save 10% off, and then another 10% off. And it's actually not the same as just 20% off, because we're going to see the second 10% off is not as good as the first 10% off. And the reason for that is because when you take 10% off, you're really paying 90%, which is equal to 9/10 or 0.9. So you would take the regular $600 and multiply by 9/10. And the 10 and the 600 cross cancels to form 60, and 60 times 9 is $540. Now the second 10% off, you're going to multiply by 9/10 again, and you're going to see that this 9/10 doesn't take off that same amount of money. It doesn't take off $60. It only takes off $54. So you cross cancel one of the zeros, and you just have 54 times 9 as a final price. And you'll end up paying $486. So there's a difference of choice A, $6. So this is how percentages work. The second 10% only took off $54 because the first 10% already decreased the price by $60. So then the second 10% isn't as good as the first 10%. All right, next for question number 9, if the function f is defined by f of x is equal to 3x plus 4, then 2 times f of x plus 4 is equal to. So wherever you see f of x, you could replace it with 3x plus 4 and just do the order of operations. So this would be equal to 2 times parentheses 3x plus 4, and then you add 4. So here you're going to have to distribute this 2, which will give you 6x plus 8. Then once you add 4, you would have to add the constants, and that will give you 6x plus 12, which is choice E. Next for question number 10, what is the greatest possible area of a triangle with one side length of 7 and another side length of 10? So you have two triangles here, or two sides of a triangle. You have one side of 7, one side of 10, and want to make this triangle the largest that can be possible. So if you actually make the angle between these two anything other than 90 degrees, you actually will have a smaller height, because the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height, but the base has to be perpendicular to the height. So if this is an acute angle, for example, the height here will be less than 7. The base, of course, is 10. So in order to maximize this triangle's area, you have to make the base, the 7 and the 10, perpendicular so that the height is exactly 7. And then when you do 1/2 base times height, that will give you 1/2 7 times 10, which cross cancels, give you that 5, and 7 times 5 is 35. Choice C. All right, next for number 11, a total of 120,000 votes were cast for two opposing candidates, Garcia and Perez. If Garcia won by a ratio of 5-3, what was the number of votes cast for Perez? So Garcia won by 5-3. So 5 corresponds to Garcia. The 3 corresponds to Perez. So Perez, because he took 3 as part of that 5-3 ratio of the votes, you can actually do part over whole. And the part corresponds with Perez, and the whole corresponds to the total. So in this case, Perez got 3 parts, and the total is 5 plus 3, or 8. So you have to do 3/8 of the total, which is 120,000. And here you can do 120 divided by 8, which will give you 15. So you'll have to do 3 times 15,000 or 45,000, which is choice C. All right, next for question number 12. If a positive integer n is picked at random from the positive integers less than or equal to 10, what's the probability that 5n plus 3 is less than or equal to 14? So you only have positive integers less than or equal to 10. So these are whole numbers. They have to be positive. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. So you have 10 numbers to choose from. And you want to see what's the probability that 5n plus 3 is less than 14. Well, if you solve for this inequality, remember inequalities are solved just like equations. You just have to flip the sign if you multiply or divide by a negative number. But fortunately, we don't have to do that in this case. So if you subtract 3 from both sides, you get that 5n has to be less than or equal to 11. Once you divide by 5, the n has to be less than or equal to 2 and 1/5. So the only numbers that are less than or equal to 2 and 1/5 are 1 and 2. So the probability is just part over whole. It's like the word chance. So in this case, the part is the two numbers, 1 and 2. And the whole is going to be equal to 10 because there's 10 numbers to choose from. And 2 tenths reduces to 1/5, which is choice C. All right, next one, number 13. If t is a number greater than 1 and t squared, then t squared is how much greater than t? So t has to be greater than 1. You want to compare t squared versus t. So to figure out how much greater, that's a keyword to subtract. So you have to solve for this expression. Now, I don't see that here, but what you can do is actually factor. If you factor out t, which is just the opposite of the distributive property, you'll end up with t minus 1 inside the parentheses, and that's choice D. You can always double check your work by distributing. And when you distribute, remember to include the sign with the term. So t times t is t squared, and t times -1 is minus t. And that gets you back to the original, so you know it's correct. So the answer has to be choice D. Next, for number 14, the height of a right circular cylinder is 5 and the diameter of its base is 4. What is the distance from the center of one base to a point on the circumference on the other base? So first you have to draw a right circular cylinder. It's just your can. And height's equal to 5. And the diameter of its base is 4, which means that the radius has to be half of that, which is 2. Now you want to figure out the distance from the center of one point on the center of one base, the point on the circumference of the other base. So here, for example, you're essentially making a cone and you want to figure out the slant height of the cone. And when you have a slant height like this is just Pythagorean theorem. So you can draw it a couple of different ways, but here the height is going to be equal to 5. This base is going to be 2. And you have a right triangle here. So it's going to be Pythagorean. And remember Pythagorean, if you have a, b, and c, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So therefore, when you substitute in, you'll get 2 squared plus 5 squared is equal to c squared. And 2 squared is equal to 4. 5 squared is 25. And that's equal to c squared. And then that's 29 is equal to c squared. When you do the square root, which is the inverse operation, c is going to be equal to the square root of 29, which is choice C. And there's a summary for this page. All right, next for number 15, if p and n are integers such that p is greater than n is greater than 0, and p squared minus n squared is equal to 12, which of the following can be the value of p minus n? So here, p is bigger than n and n is bigger than 0, so they're both positive, which is good. And you know that p squared minus n squared has to be equal to 12. So here, this is actually your difference of two squares factoring pattern. And when you have a squared minus b squared, you can factor this to a plus b times a minus b. So from here, we can actually take p squared minus n squared into p plus n times p minus n. And that's equal to positive 12. Now, they're both going to be positive numbers, and p is larger than n, so this has to be positive, this has to be positive, and they are whole numbers. So there really aren't that many numbers that this can be, because these two factors must be positive, and they have to multiply to give you 12. So if you list out the factors of 12, you have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. So you want to try each one, specifically just 1, 2, and 4. So let's try Roman numeral number 1. If p minus n is equal to 1, p plus n has to be equal to 12. So here, if you try to solve for this system of equations, you can solve this system of equations by doing the elimination method. And if you add the two equations together, you eliminate n, that'll give you 2p is equal to 13, or p is equal to 6.5. That doesn't work because it's not a whole number, so it violates that. So Roman numeral 1 is false, so A, C, and E are all eliminated. Then you try Roman numeral number 2. So if p minus n is equal to 2, that means that p plus n has to be equal to 6, because 6 times 2 is equal to 12. So here, p plus n is equal to 6, and p minus n is equal to 2. Add the two equations here, eliminate n, you get 2p is equal to 8, and when you divide by 2, you get that p is equal to 4. Now, p is equal to 4, you can substitute back in to solve. P plus n has to be equal to 6, so you know that it has to be 4 plus 2, and 4 minus 2 is in fact equal to 2, so everything does check out. Here, Roman numeral 2 is potentially the answer. Now you still have one more to test out, and that's choice 3. So in this case, you have p plus n times p minus n is equal to 12. Here, p minus n is equal to 4. P plus n will have to be 3. So p plus n is equal to 3. P minus n is equal to 4. If you add, you eliminate n, you get that 2p is equal to 7. Or when you divide by 2 from both sides, you get that p is equal to 3.5. And that's not an integer, so that violates this fact. So we eliminate choice 3, and therefore choice D. So therefore the answer has to be choice B, 2 only. All right, so 16 to 18 refers to the following figure, and information. The grid above represents equally spaced streets in a town that has no one-way street. F marks the corner where a firehouse is located. Points W, X, Y, Z represent the location of some of the other buildings. The fire company defines a building's M distance as the minimum number of blocks that a fire truck must travel from the firehouse to reach the building. For example, the building at X is determined at an M distance of 2, and the building at Y is an M distance of 1/2 from the firehouse. Again, F is the firehouse, so let's label that. Now, what's the end distance of the building at W from the firehouse? So W is here. So all we have to do is just follow the rules. So we just have to count. To go from F to W, you would go 1, 2, 3 blocks. You're still not there. You have another block left, half a block left, I should say. So this would be 3.5. That's going to be choice D. Next to number 17, what is the total number of different routes that a fire truck can travel, the M distance from F to Z? You're going from F to Z, and it's a 2x2 grid here. So I'm just going to redraw that here for number 17. So here the F distance, or sorry, the M distance is 4. So basically, you can't go around in circles. So here, you do the shortest possible path to go from F to Z. So if you count the different paths, you can go all the way left, then all the way down, left, and then down, left, and then down. Or you can go down, right, down, left, or all the way down and all the way left. So that's already path 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, when you go to the left, you can go all the way down and then left. So here, you can go left, all the way down and then left. Or you can also go down, all the way to the left, and then down. So that's another 2 more for this L shape. So when you do 4 paths plus 2 paths, you will get choice A, 6. Next one, number 18. All of the buildings in the town that are an M distance of 3 from the firehouse must lie on a. All right, so you want distance at 3 M units away. So that includes a Y, F, Y, X, and W. So if you want stuff that's only 3 blocks, essentially 3 blocks away, if you look at the range of everything with 3 blocks, you form this shape, and you just have to connect the dots. Oops, sorry, I miscounted. You formed a diamond shape, but it's a diamond shape where all the sides are equal and all the angles are equal. This is choice B, a square. All right, next for number 19, if x and y are positive integers, which of the following is equivalent to 2x raised to the 3y minus 2x raised to the y? So here, you can actually rewrite some of these exponents as using a power of power, because b to the a raised to the c is b to the a times c. So because of a product 3 times y here, you can actually turn this first expression to 2x raised to the 3 power raised to the y. And then you can subtract 2x raised to the y. All right. Now you can, because they have the same exponents here, you can actually evaluate what this is going to be by factoring out 2x raised to the y power. I'm sorry, I wrote this part wrong. So you can factor out 2x raised to the y, which is this piece. So that will give you 2x raised to the y, in parentheses, is equal to 2x raised to the y. But instead of cubed, it would be squared. Sorry, it's not supposed to be an equal sign. And you're subtracting 1 because this whole thing got factored out. All right, and this can be rewritten. If you do power to a power here, you'll get 2x raised to the y, and in parentheses, it'll be 2x raised to the 2y minus 1. And if you rewrite this, this will be choice C. Next, for number 20, if j, k, and n are consecutive integers such that 0 is less than j, is less than k, is less than n, and the units or the ones digit of the product j times n is equal to 9, what is the unit digit of k? To the consecutive integers, so they're whole numbers and they're next to each other, so the one after the other, and n is the largest. Now the product of j times n is 9, which means that or the ones place of this product is 9. So if you look at the factors of 9, it's just 1 and 9 or 3 and 3. So you're gonna have to see the only way that this is possible where they're consecutive integers is if they were the first option, the 1 and the 9, because you can have something like 19, then 20, and then 21, where j and n, when you multiply it together, it will have a 9 in the ones place. Remember, when you have numbers being multiplied, if you ignore all the other place values, there's always going to be a place value where you shift it over, and there's a placeholder here. So the units place of a multiplication question is always the units place, the product of the two units digits. So here, the units digit of k, the number in the middle, has to be 0, no matter what it is. So it's choice A. You can't have 3 and 3 here because there are no numbers. You can't have 3 numbers in which the biggest number ends in 3 and the smallest number ends in 3 if they're one after the other. So it has to be either something like 19, 20, 21 or 39, 40, 41 for J, K, and N. So the answer here is choice A. K has to end in 0. All right, and here's a summary for this page. All right, for question number 1, this says, in the sequence above, the first term is 4, and each term after first is 7 more than the previous term. What is the 12th term of the sequence? So here we have what's called an arithmetic sequence. An arithmetic sequence is one in which you keep adding a constant to get to the next term. In this case, it's 7. So the general format for an arithmetic sequence, A of n, where n is equal to the term number, and d is equal to the common difference, which is that number you keep adding. And you have A, which is the first term. The formula is A plus n minus 1 times d. And you have to subtract 1 from n, the term number, because if you look at the term number, in this case it's n, to get to the second term, you only add 7, the common difference, 1 time, right here. To get to the third term, you have to add 7 2 times. So you have to subtract 1 because you start out with the first term. So that being said, we actually have all the ingredients to substitute in because in this case, n is 12. That's a 12th number. The common difference d is equal to 7. And here, the first term, a is equal to 4. So when you substitute in, that will be 4 plus 7 times 12 minus 1, or 4 plus 7 times 11, which is 77 plus 4, which will give you 81. Choice B. All right, next for question number 2. If x minus 2 squared is equal to 49, then x could be. So here you can actually take a shortcut and do the square root on both sides, which is the inverse operation. But you have to remember that if you do the square root, because the original equation was squared, that exponent of 2 tells you that there are at most 2 answers. So you could have 2 answers here, the positive and a negative root. So here, x minus 2, what's underneath the square root, could actually be equal to positive 7, or x minus 2 could be equal to negative 7. Because 7 squared is 49, but so is negative 7 squared. You have to solve both of these equations. For the first one, if you add 2 to both sides, we get that x is equal to 9. And then for the second part, if you add 2 to both sides, you will get that x is equal to negative 5. So x would be equal to 9 or negative 5. I don't see negative 5 as an answer choice, but I do see 9 in choice E, so that has to be the answer. Now, normally you always want to double check and make sure that you're not doing anything that's illegal in math, like doing the square root of a negative number. And in this case, if you check 9 minus 2 squared, that is equal to 7 squared, which is 49. And if you check negative 5, substitute that in, you'll get negative 7 in parentheses squared, which is also equal to positive 49. So both of these check out. All right, next for question number 3, the average arithmetic mean of t and y is equal to 15. And then the average of w and x is equal to 15. What's the average of t, w, x, and y? Well, since the average of t and y is 15, you know that t plus y divided by 2 has to be equal to 15 because the average is equal to the total sum divided by the number of data. So in this case, if you multiply both sides by 2, you'll get that t plus y has to be equal to 30. Now for the second equation, you have w plus x, divide that by 2, that has to be equal to 15 as well. And if you multiply by 2 to both sides, you'll get that w plus x is also equal to 30. So then if you want to do the average of all 4, t plus w plus x plus y is going to be equal to 30 plus 30, or 60, and now you have 4 numbers. So you got to divide by 4, and the average is still equal to 15, choice B. And that's because the average of 2 of them is equal to 15, the average of another 2 is 15, well then the average of all 4 is going to be the same. All right, next for number 4, if the statement above is true, all of K's brothers can swim, which of the following must also be true? So just go through all the choices and let's evaluate the truth value. If Fred cannot swim, then he is not K's brother. Well, that statement is true because if he can swim, then he could be his brother because his brother has to be able to swim. So if Fred can't swim, he cannot be K's brother. So here you can actually turn this into an if-then statement. So if you are K's brother, then you can swim. And remember the truth value, another statement with the same truth value is called a contrapositive. And a contrapositive is an inverse and a converse. So you got to switch the order and also negate it. So that means that if you can't swim, then you are not K's brother. So choice A says that. It's the same as the original statement. This is a contrapositive. The other statements are either converses or inverses, and they're not always true. So again, you have to start with cannot swim, and only choice A is the one that starts with cannot swim. All right, next for question number 5. In the figure above, triangle A, B, and C is inscribed in the circle with center O and a diameter of AC. Now, if AB is equal to AO, what's the degree measure of angle ABO? So here we have a circle, and O is the center, and you have 3 radii there, so you know that all these sides are going to be equal to one another. Now, here you also know that AO is equal to AB. So that means that triangle ABO has to be an equilateral triangle. And in equilateral triangle, all angles are equal as well, in addition to their sides. So the answer has to be choice D. All right, next for number 6, each of the following is equivalent to A over B times BC plus K, except. So here, what you can do is distribute to get rid of the parentheses just to simplify things, and that will give you A times E times C divided by B, which B cancels out, plus A times K divided by B. So this will be equal to AC plus AK over B. Let's go through all the choices and see which one's equal to this. So in choice A, you would distribute the A across, and that will give you AC plus AK all over B. And here you can actually split this into 2 fractions because you have a common base or a common denominator of B. Except that's not the same as the original here because there shouldn't be a fraction here. So the answer is probably A, but you gotta go through all the choices just to be safe. So for choice B, that will give you AC plus AK over B, which is exactly what we have, so that's not what we're looking for. For choice C, you'll have AK over B plus A times E times C divided by B. And here B cancels out, so this is AK over B plus AC. And here, this is the same as the original, just the commutative property, which means you can switch the order. Choice D is the same as this, so that's not what we're looking for. And for choice E, you can actually split this into 2 different fractions because you have the same denominator, and that'll give you ABC over B plus AK over B. B cancels out, and you end up with the same as the original. So the answer is choice A. All right, next for number 7, in the figure above, A, B, C, D, and E, F intersect at point P over here. Now, if R is equal to 90 degrees, S is equal to 50 degrees, T is equal to 60 degrees, U is equal to 45 degrees, W is equal to 50 degrees, what is the value of X? All right, so here you have a whole bunch of triangles, and remember, a triangle adds up to 180 degrees. So if we have 2 of the angles in a triangle, we can figure out the last one. For example, this angle here, for the triangle BPF, it's going to be 180 minus 50 plus 60, which is 110. That'll give you 70. Now, if this angle is 70, the opposite angle here also has to be 70. Because in an opposite angle or a vertical angle, they are congruent. You have this X formation here. All right, so now if this angle and this angle are 50 and 45, that angle in the middle will be 180 minus 95, which is 50 plus 45. So that will give you 85. Now, if this angle is 85, the top angle has to be 85 as well. And now we can actually use the fact that a straight line is equal to 180 degrees. They're supplementary. So here we actually have a straight line where you have an 85 and a 70. So 85 plus 70 is 155. Then you do 180 minus 155. And you'll get 25 degrees. So that's this angle here. Now R is the right angle, so that's 90 degrees. So we can now solve for X. 90 plus 25 is equal to 115. Then you can do 180 minus 115 to give you 65 degrees. So the answer is choice C, 65. Next, for number 8, based on the portions of the graph of the functions f and g shown above, where are all the values of x between -6 and +6 for which g of x is greater than f of x? So g of x is the y values for the graph of g, and you're comparing it to the y values of graph f. And you want the g, this function g, to be larger. So this is larger when the inputs are between these 2 points, specifically -3 and 0. That's going to be choice B. Because you don't have the strong inequality, you don't need the equal sign. Between -3 and 0, the values up here on this line, g of x, is going to be greater than the value of f, which is below that line. So the answer is going to be B. All right, and here's the summary for this page. All right, next for question number 9. When her son's class held its magazine drive, Dr. Nelson bought 7 one-year magazine subscriptions for the waiting room at her office. She bought 4 subscriptions that have 12 issues per year, 2 that have 4 issues a year, and 1 subscription that has 52 issues per year. Altogether, how many subscriptions will her office receive from one of these subscriptions? So here, she has 4 subscriptions with 12 issues per year. So per, in this case, means multiply or divide. In this case, you're multiplying because I want to find the total. So that's going to be 48. Now, 2 magazines have, 4 issues a year. So that's going to be 2 times 4, which is going to be 8. Finally, have 1 magazine that's 52 issues a year. So that's 1 times 52, which is just 52. So when you add everything up, you have 108. So she will get 108 magazines. All right, next for number 10. 3 more than twice a number is equal to 4. What's a number? So here you got to turn the word sentence to a number sentence. More than means plus, and twice means times 2. So 3 plus 2 times a number, in this case, some number, you can call it x or n, and that's going to be equal to 4. So you can solve by subtracting 3 to both sides. You got to use inverse operations. You get 2n is equal to 1. Then if you divide by 2, you get that n is equal to 1/2. Now you can always check your work here. So when you check, if n is equal to 1/2, well, first you got to double the number. 2 times n is 1. Then you got to add it to 3, and you get 4, which means that everything checks out. All right, next for number 11. The table above shows the total number of copies of Book B that were sold by the end of each of the first 5 weeks of its publication. How many copies of the book were sold during the 3rd week of its publication? After 1 week, you sold 3,200. After 2 weeks, you sold 5,500. So if you do a subtraction, 5,500 minus 3,200 will be 2,300, and that is week 2. Now, you want to figure out week 3, then you have to do 6,800 subtract 5,500. So when you subtract, you get 1,300. So during the 3rd week, you sold 1,300 books, and then altogether, the cumulative total is going to be 6,800. All right, next for number 12. If j divided by k is 32 and k is equal to 3/2, what's the value of 1/2 of j? So here, you know that k is equal to 3 halves, so you can substitute in. And now you have this complex fraction because j divided by 3 halves is equal to 32. And this it's actually kind of helpful to rewrite this as a fraction bar, to rewrite this as a fraction question. So a fraction bar just means equation, right? So that means that j divided by 3 halves is equal to 32. And here you can do KCF. So then j times 2/3, the reciprocal of 3 halves, is equal to 32. And now to solve for this equation, you actually have to multiply by this reciprocal, which is 3 halves. And when you cross cancel, you get that j is equal to 16 times 3, or 48. But that's what j is equal to. You want half of j. So that's equal to half of 48, which is equal to 24. So here the key is to do a keep change flip. All right, next for number 3, in the system of equations above, what is the value of x plus y? So here, to solve the system, you only have 2 equations for 3 variables, so you actually can't solve for all of them. However, if you subtract these 2 equations, because they're set up for an elimination, x minus x and y minus y cancels out, and you have 3z minus z, or 3z minus 1z, and you get 2z is equal to 200. And once you divide by 2, you get that z is equal to 100. So once you know that z is equal to 100, well, x plus y plus z, the second equation, is 400. Z is equal to 100. So you know that x plus y plus 100 is equal to 400. So if you subtract 100, you get that x plus y is going to be equal to 300. Right, next for number 14, there are 25 trays on a table in the cafeteria. Each tray contains a cup only, a plate only, or both a cup and a plate. If 15 of the trays contains cups and 21 trays contain plates, how many contain both a cup and a plate? So this is actually a Venn diagram question because you have 25 trays total. Some of them have only cups, some of them have only plates, and some of them have both. And that's the middle portion here. So 15 of them contains cups. So if you have variables a, b, and c, a plus b is the cups, so that's 15. 21 have trays containing plates, so that's b plus c. And here, you want to figure out how many contain both a cup and a plate. Well, if you add the 2 equations together, you'll have a plus 2b plus c is equal to 36. But you know that a plus b plus c is equal to 25, because there's only 25 altogether. And then if you subtract here, a and c cancels out. When you do this elimination, 2b subtracted b is equal to just b, just a middle, is equal to 11. So the idea here is to do 15 plus 21, knowing that you double count the middle and then you subtract it from the total, and you just get that the middle is equal to 11. Now you can double check and make sure everything's correct. So the cups circle is 15. Well, 15 minus 11 has to be 4, so a has to be equal to 4. And you can double check with the second circle, the plate circle, that has to be 21. So 21 minus 11 is 10. And double check with a plus b plus c. 4 plus 11 plus 10 is in fact equal to 25. So everything checks out here. So just be careful with the double counting of the middle region for these Venn diagram questions. All right, next for number 15. In the figure above, line L intersects the x-axis at x equals -2 and the y-axis at y equals -3. If line M, which is not shown, passes through the origin as perpendicular to line L, what's the slope of line M? So a perpendicular slope actually has a negative reciprocal slope. That's something that you need to remember. So the goal is to find the slope of line L, and then just take the negative reciprocal of that. So for line L, you have 2 points. which allows you to find the slope. So you have a point 0, comma -3, the y-intercept, and -2, comma 0, the x-intercept. And the equation for slope, which is change of y over change in x, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. When you substitute in, you get, you have to keep the order. So if you do 0 minus -3, you have to do -2 minus 0. That will give you 3 over -2. So that means that the slope is going to be -3 over 2. So for the perpendicular line M, which will look something like this, you have to do the negative reciprocal slope. So that's going to be positive 2/3. All right, next for number 16, if 6 is less than the absolute value of x minus 3, which is less than 7, and x is less than 0, then what is one possible value of the absolute value of x? So here you have an absolute value inequality, and we can actually treat this like it's two different questions. So for the left one, you know that 6 is less than the absolute value of x minus 3. Well, here, this absolute value really turns into two different scenarios, if it's positive inside or if it's negative on the inside. So you have the positive case is easy. You know that 6 is less than x minus 3. If the stuff inside is positive, the absolute value just goes away. And here, you just have this inequality to solve. Just add 3 to both sides. You know that 9 has to be less than x. So x is greater than 9. Now, you can't have this because you know that x has to be negative. So we have to eliminate this. Now, on the other side, you know that 6 is less than, here, when you negate the input, since x minus 3 is negative, you have to negate it to turn it positive. So you want to put parentheses here. So here you can either divide by -1 or distribute the negative sign. Remember, if you divide by -1, you have to flip the sign. So then -6 will now be greater than x minus 3. So you gotta flip the sign. So then when you add 3 to both sides, you get that -3 is greater than x. So maybe that could be it. X has to be less than -3. Right, so that's one branch here. Now you have the other branch to worry about with the 7. So you do the same thing, x minus 3, the absolute value of that has to be less than 7. And again, you have two scenarios, the positive and the negative. The positive case is easy. Absolute value just goes away. Add 3 to both sides. You know that x has to be less than 10, positive 10. So maybe that could be it. And then for the other case, you have negative, so you know that negative of x minus 3 has to be less than 7. You can divide by -1, but remember to flip the sign here. And if you add 3 to both sides, you get that x has to be greater than -4. So you have a couple of inequalities here, and you want to just kind of see the overlap. Now, x has to be negative, but x has to be greater than -4. And x has to be greater than -3. So this is going to be the one that is going to be the most important. So if x has to be greater than -3, then the absolute value of x then would just be something like 3.1. Or the absolute value of x can be something like 3.1. Anything between 3 and this 4 would be okay. So the absolute value of x would be between 3 and 4 because x is going to be in between -3 and -4. All right, next for number 17. What is the product of the smallest prime number that is greater than 50 and the greatest prime number that is less than 50. All right, so the prime number that is the greatest prime number less than 50 is going to be 47. And the prime number that is smallest prime number greater than 50 would be 53. So you'll have to multiply 53 times 47. That will give you 2,491. All right, next for number 18 in the figure above, PQRS is a rectangle. The area of RST is 7, and PT is equal to 2 fifths of PS. What is the area of PQRS? Right, so triangle RS. For question number 18, a PQRS is a rectangle, and the area of triangle RST is 7, and PT is 2 fifths of PS. What's the area of PQRS? So here we have this rectangle, and as you know, the area of a rectangle is just base times the height. So that's what we're looking for, B times H. But unfortunately, we don't have much more information than that. What we do have is this triangle here. And in this triangle, we know that the area is 7, and then the next part of info that we know is that PT, or this segment of the base, is 2 fifths of the total. Now the total, P to S, is called B. So that we know that PT is equal to 2 fifths of B. Now the base of this triangle is what we can actually use to figure out the area. The base of the triangle has to be 3 fifths of B, because 2 fifths of B plus 3 fifths of B will be equal to 1 whole, 5 fifths of B. So for this triangle, RST, the base is 3 fifths of B and the height is B. So remember, the area of a triangle is equal to 1/2 base times height. So that's going to be equal to 1/2. The base is 3 fifths of B and the height is H. And we know that this is equal to 7. So this is your equation, and notice that BH, the area of the rectangle, is actually hidden in there. So all we have to do is solve for B times H to isolate it. So your equation is 7 is equal to 1/2 of 3 fifths BH. And to solve for B times H, we had to multiply by the reciprocal of both of these fractions. Specifically, 5/3 times 2/1. And if we do that, the 5 cancels out with the 5, 2 cancels out with the 2, and the 3 cancels out with the 3. But you also have to do that to the other side. So on the right side, we are just left with B times H, which is the area of the rectangle, which is what we want. And that's going to be equal to 5 times 2 times 7, or 70. Remember, the 7 is 7/1, divided by 3 times 1 times 1, or just 3. So the answer is 70/3. We actually figured out the area of the rectangle without using the base and height. We actually don't know what the base and the height are. We don't have enough equations to solve this system, but we know that the area of the rectangle has to be 70/3. All right, and here is the summary for this last page. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.